It is a heavy, humid Tuesday morning in late July. Last night's storm soaked the valley, and now the sun turns your garden into a steaming room. You part the tomato vines and feel your heart drop. Dark lesions crawl up the stems. Yellow leaves freckle brown. Your cucumbers wear a dusty white coat like flour. Blight and powdery mildew have arrived. In 3 days, the harvest you waited months for could rot on the vine. At the garden center, every bright bottle whispers the same answer. Spray poison on the food your family will eat. But there is something in your refrigerator, cheap and ordinary. Mixed with water, it can stop mildew, shield tomatoes, and let you eat the fruit the same day. My name is Daniel Yoder. I am Amish, and I farm in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. My wife, Rebecca, tends a large kitchen garden behind our farmhouse. That garden feeds our children, our grandchildren, and fills our root cellar for the long winter. Rebecca has never allowed a single drop of chemical fungicide onto her soil. We protect our crops the same way. My parents and grandparents protected theirs. And the same way the old country farmers did, before there was a chemical manufacturing plant built in this nation. Today, I am going to walk you through exactly how we use simple milk to protect the garden. I am going to explain the beautiful chemistry of sunlight that makes it work, and I am going to tell you the one thing the internet gets completely wrong about this method that could ruin your soil. If you do not know any better, stay with me. This is going to change how you grow food. Let me first tell you why this works, because if you do not understand the why, you are just blindly following a recipe. And that is not how a careful farmer operates. When folks hear about using milk in the garden, they think it is just about feeding the plant calcium. That is only a tiny fraction of the truth. The real magic, the actual disease-killing power of milk, is about the chemistry of sunlight. Fungal diseases like powdery mildew and late blight thrive in damp, stagnant, shaded conditions. They reproduce by tiny spores that blow in on the wind and land on wet leaves. When you spray a diluted mixture of milk onto those leaves, the protein in the milk coats the surface. Now here is the secret. When the ultraviolet rays of the bright morning sun hit those milk proteins, a chemical reaction occurs. The sunlight interacting with the milk produces free radicals, specifically oxygen radicals. To a microscopic fungal spore, these free radicals are an absolute inferno. They act as a powerful natural antiseptic. The sun and the milk work together to literally burn the fungus off the leaf at a microscopic level without harming the plant tissue itself. At the same time, the fats and proteins in the milk dry into a thin, invisible film across the surface of the leaf. This film acts like a physical shield. Fungal spores that land on the leaf later cannot penetrate this protein barrier to infect the plant cells. Furthermore, many soft-bodied insects, like certain aphids and spider mites, lack the enzyme called lactase. They cannot digest milk sugar. When they encounter leaves coated in a milk film, they avoid them or perish trying to consume them. It is a dual-action defense system given to us by nature, requiring nothing more than what comes out of a cow and what shines down from the sky. Now I must stop right here and tell you the honest truth about what not to do. This is the part where people watch a short video on the internet and end up destroying their own garden. Listen to me very closely. You do not ever take milk, mix it heavily, and pour it directly onto the soil around the base of your plants. I have seen videos and articles telling folks to mix milk and water, 1 to 2, and dump it into the dirt to feed the roots. I will tell you plainly, doing that is a disaster. If you pour large amounts of milk into your soil, the fats and proteins will rot. They will sour. They will create a foul, rancid stench that will draw every blowfly, maggot, and scavenger for a mile around. Worse than that, souring milk in the soil creates an anaerobic environment, a place without oxygen. It will breed bad, putrefying bacteria that will outcompete the good, healthy microbes in your soil. It will literally suffocate the roots of your cucumbers and tomatoes, causing root rot. Your plants will wilt, turn yellow, and die, and your garden will smell like a garbage dump. Milk is not a root fertilizer. Milk is a foliar spray. Foliar means leaves. It is meant to be applied to the leaves, up in the air, where the sun can hit it and dry it. It is not meant to be dumped into the earth. Know the difference between a tool and a poison. A tool used the wrong way becomes a poison. We use milk on the leaves. We leave the soil to the compost. Here is what you need to build this defense. It is brilliantly simple. First, you need milk. What kind of milk? The absolute best is raw, unpasteurized milk, straight from the cow, because it still contains all the natural enzymes and beneficial lactic acid bacteria. But I know most of you do not have a cow in the barn like we do. So, if you are buying from the grocery store, buy skim milk. Not whole milk, not 2%, skim milk. Why? Because the disease-killing power is in the proteins, not the fat. Fat is what goes rancid and smells sour. Skim milk gives you all the protein power with almost zero fat, meaning your garden will not smell like sour milk after you spray it. You do not need anything expensive. The cheapest gallon of skim milk will do perfectly. If you have milk that expired 2 days ago, and you are about to pour it down the drain, keep it. Slightly soured milk works just as well for this. Second, you need clean water. Rainwater caught in a barrel is perfect, or plain tap water that you have let sit in an open bucket overnight so the chlorine can evaporate off. Chlorine kills bacteria, and you want to keep the natural biology of the garden alive. Third, you need a pump sprayer. A clean, dedicated garden sprayer that has never held chemical weed killers. You can buy a 1-gallon hand pump sprayer at the hardware store for $15. It is an investment that will last you a decade. That is the entire list. No masks, no hazmat suits, no measuring out toxic granules. Here is exactly how Rebecca and I mix and apply this to our tomatoes and cucumbers. I will give you the steps slow and plain, so there is no confusion. Step 1, the ratio. The golden ratio for this spray is 1 part milk to 10 parts water. Do not think that making it stronger will make it better. It will not. A stronger mix will just invite mold and clog your sprayer. 1 to 10 is the exact sweet spot the old farmers figured out, and modern agricultural science has since confirmed. Pour 1 cup of your skim milk into your empty sprayer. Then add 10 cups of clean water. Close the lid on your sprayer and shake it gently to mix. Step 2, the optional booster. If your plants are already showing heavy signs of powdery mildew, meaning the white powder is already thick on the broad leaves of your cucumbers and squash, Rebecca likes to add 1 single teaspoon of plain baking soda to a 1-gallon batch of this milk spray. Baking soda is highly alkaline. When a fungal spore lands on an alkaline surface, it shrivels up. The baking soda acts as a rapid knockdown, while the milk provides the long-term protein shield. Stir it in until it dissolves completely. If your plants are healthy, and you are just doing this for prevention, skip the baking soda. The milk alone is enough. Step 3, the timing. This is the second most critical rule, right after not pouring it in the soil. You must spray this in the morning, on a day when the sun is going to shine. Remember the chemistry I told you about. The milk needs the ultraviolet light of the sun to create those fungus-killing free radicals. If you spray this in the evening as the sun goes down, the milk will just sit wet on the leaves all night in the dark. That is exactly what you do not want. You want the plant to be coated in the morning, so the rising sun bakes the milk proteins onto the leaf, creating the shield. So pick a sunny morning, right after the heavy dew has mostly dried, around 8 or 9 a.m. Step 4, the application. Pump up your sprayer to get a good fine mist. You are not trying to blast the plant with a fire hose. You want a gentle, enveloping fog. Start at the bottom of the plant nearest the soil, because that is where blight spores splash up from the dirt during a heavy rainstorm. Spray the lower stems. Then point the wand upward and spray the underside of the leaves. This is vital. Fungi love to hide on the shaded underside of the leaf, where it stays dampest. Coat the undersides, then coat the topsides. You want the entire plant dripping with a fine, milky dew. Move through your tomatoes, your cucumbers, your zucchini, your squash, your pumpkins. These are the broad-leafed plants most susceptible to summer fungi. Step 5. The rhythm. Prevention is always cheaper than a cure. Do not wait until your plants are half dead to start. Begin spraying your plants with this milk mixture shortly after you transplant them into the garden, and repeat it every 10 to 14 days throughout the growing season. Mark it on your calendar. Every other Saturday morning, make a fresh batch and walk the rows. Furthermore, if you get a massive driving rainstorm that lasts for 2 days, that rain will wash the protein shield off the leaves. As soon as the storm passes and the bright sun comes back out, go out and spray them again. You are replacing the armor. Step 6, the cleanup. When you are done, empty any leftover spray out of your sprayer. Do not leave diluted milk sitting in the plastic tank in the hot sun for 2 weeks. It will rot, it will stink, and it will clog the nozzle of your wand. Pour the excess onto your compost pile. Rinse the tank with clean water. Pump a little clean water through the hose to clear the line, and leave the lid open to dry. It takes 2 minutes and saves your equipment. Now I want to take a moment, because this is the part that matters, and it is bigger than the tomatoes. Think about the system that profits when your garden gets sick. When you plant a seed, nobody makes money. When you grow a healthy plant in good compost, nobody makes money. But when your plant gets sick, suddenly an entire industry opens its doors to you. The chemical fungicide industry relies on your fear and your failure. They spend millions of dollars a year designing bright, glossy labels with pictures of dead tomatoes to scare you into buying their plastic jugs. They isolate a synthetic compound in a laboratory, patent it, put it in a bottle, and sell it to you for $20. And the bitter truth is, those synthetic chemicals are indiscriminate. They do not just kill the powdery mildew. When the rain comes, they run off the leaf, drip into the soil, and kill the beneficial mycorrhizal fungi, the very living, breathing network in the soil that helps your plant's roots absorb water and nutrients. By spraying the chemical, you save the leaf for a week, but you weaken the soil for the season. The plant becomes more fragile, more dependent on synthetic fertilizers. And next year, you have to buy an even stronger chemical just to get the same result. It is a cycle of dependence. You are subscribing to their chemicals just to keep a plant alive. There is absolutely no money in telling a man that a splash of leftover skim milk from his kitchen fridge, mixed with water from his tap, will cure his garden. A 3-gallon of skim milk makes 10 gallons of antifungal spray. That comes out to 30 cents a gallon. You cannot build a multi-million-dollar corporate headquarters by selling 30-cent garden cures. You cannot sponsor a television commercial with skim milk and tap water. So they do not tell you. The garden centers do not put signs up reminding you to check your dairy drawer. They just stock the shelves with the $20 bottles and wait for the July rain to bring the blight. My parents and grandparents never bought those bottles. Not because we could not afford them, but because we understood that a farm is a closed, honest loop. The cow eats the grass. The cow makes the milk. The milk feeds the family. The leftover milk protects the garden. The garden feeds the family. The garden scraps feed the chickens. It is a perfect circle. The moment you step outside that circle to buy a plastic jug of patented poison, you have invited a stranger to profit off your land. We refuse to do that. I remember a summer when my youngest son was just learning to help Rebecca in the garden. He was maybe 8 years old. We had a stretch of humid, terrible weather in August. The air felt like a wet wool blanket. The English neighbors down the road lost their entire crop of Roma tomatoes in 4 days to late blight. It just swept through their yard like a fire. My son came running into the house, nearly in tears, asking my wife if our tomatoes were going to die too. Rebecca smiled, handed him the pump sprayer filled with our cloudy white water, and said, "Not if we give them their morning coat." They walked the rows together as the sun came over the barn, misting every leaf. Our tomatoes produced heavy, red fruit until the first hard frost in October. The neighbor came over in September, looked at our vines heavy with food, and asked what brand of chemical we used. I told him we used the Holstein cow standing in the pasture. He thought I was making a joke at his expense. He simply could not believe that something so humble, so plain, could outwork the expensive bottles sitting on a shelf in his garage. But that is the nature of old wisdom. It is quiet, it is humble. It does not boast. It just sits there and works year after year for the people patient enough to remember it. So, here is what I want you to do this week. Walk out into your garden early tomorrow morning. Look closely at the lower leaves of your tomatoes, cucumbers, zucchini, and squash. Look for the yellowing, the brown spots, the white powdery dust. Do not panic if you see it. Do not get in your car and drive to the garden center to buy a bottle of poison. Instead, walk back into your kitchen. Take out a cup of skim milk. Pour it into your sprayer. Add 10 cups of water. Walk back out into the bright morning sun and mist your plants until they drip. Take back the control of your own food. You spend your hard-earned money and your precious time tilling the earth, pulling the weeds, and planting the seeds. Do not surrender the final step to a chemical company. Tell me in the comments below. What is the worst disease trying to steal your harvest right now? Is it the powdery mildew on the cucumbers, the late blight on the tomatoes, or something else entirely? I read every single one of these comments. The struggles you share and the victories you report from your own backyards are the very reason I sit down to record these words. Next time I am going to show you how Rebecca deals with the hornworms, the slugs, and the cabbage moths without ever using a harsh insecticide. We are going to look at a simple crushed flour that has been keeping insect pests out of farmhouses for a century, and how you can use it to build an invisible fortress around your vegetable beds. It is the natural next step after protecting the leaves from fungus. Until then, keep your plants in the sunlight. Leave the chemicals on the store shelf, and remember, the people who built this country with their hands knew things that we are only just starting to remember.